Have you ever felt like the more you understand, the lonelier you become? Like every time your mind dares to wander beyond the surface, people look at you differently. Distant, uneasy, even threatened. It's not just your imagination. There is something about seeing too clearly, about thinking too deeply, that unsettles others. And if you've felt this, you already know. Intelligence is not always a gift. Sometimes it's a curse. Let me ask you this. Have you ever tried to bring up something profound in a casual conversation, only to watch people's faces shift? Their smiles tighten, their eyes glaze over, and then, just like that, they change the subject to the weather, sports, or the latest viral meme. You weren't trying to impress anyone. You weren't lecturing. You were just sharing a thought. And yet, you felt the silence, the discomfort, the subtle push away. Why does this happen? Why does society so often reject the very people who dare to think differently? To answer that, we need to look at something deeper, something philosophers, psychologists, and history itself have been whispering to us for centuries. When you stand next to someone who is stronger than you may admire their power. When you meet someone who is wealthier, you might envy them, but you don't feel personally attacked. But when you encounter someone whose mind cuts deeper than your own, something strange happens. Psychologists call it the mirror effect. A deep thinker doesn't just share ideas, they hold up a mirror that exposes the cracks in other people's beliefs. Their very presence reflects back inadequacies that most would rather ignore, and human beings by nature are not forgiving when their ego is challenged. Nietzsche once said, "Sometimes people don't want to hear the truth because they don't want their illusions destroyed." The tragedy is that illusions are precisely what most people live on. Comfort, familiarity, certainty. Think about it. Strength, wealth, beauty, these are external. They don't cut to the core of who we are. But intelligence? That's personal. Our beliefs, our worldview, our ability to reason, that is who we are. So when someone questions what we take for granted, it feels like they are not just attacking our ideas, but attacking us. That's why history is filled with brilliant minds who were not celebrated but condemned. Socrates forced Athenians to question their traditions, and they sentenced him to death. Galileo looked through a telescope and proved the Earth revolved around the sun. He was silenced and placed under house arrest. Nietzsche was dismissed as insane. Tesla died in poverty while others stole his ideas. Alan Turing saved millions of lives by breaking codes in World War II. Yet he was persecuted into despair because his existence made people uncomfortable. The pattern is clear. Society does not reject deep thinkers because they are wrong. Society rejects them because they are right too soon. But here's the deeper truth. It's not just history. It's happening now. And it's not only society. It's you. It's me. It's all of us. Modern neuroscience reveals that when people feel intellectually outmatched, their brain's amygdala, the fear center, activates as if they were facing a predator. In other words, encountering someone too intelligent doesn't just feel uncomfortable, it feels dangerous. Why? Because for most of human history, survival didn't depend on being the smartest. It depended on belonging to the tribe. To stand out was to risk exile, and exile in a world of predators and scarcity often meant death. Our brains are still wired this way. That's why conformity feels safe, and difference feels threatening, even when that difference is truth. Here's the uncomfortable twist. This means that many people would rather cling to comforting lies than face painful truths. Arthur Schopenhauer, the philosopher of brutal honesty, once argued that intelligence is not a blessing, but a curse. Why? Because the more you see reality as it truly is, the harder it becomes to play along with the illusions everyone else depends on. Most people live by what Schopenhauer called the will to live, the blind drive toward comfort, pleasure, and survival. deep thinkers are consumed by a different drive, the will to truth. And truth is rarely comfortable. It dismantles illusions, exposes futility, and often leaves the thinker standing alone. Maybe you've felt this. Maybe you've looked around at parties, workplaces, even family gatherings, and felt a kind of disconnection. While others are absorbed in gossip, small talk, and status games, you crave something more: depth, honesty, meaning. And yet, when you try to bring it, you feel like an outsider intruding on their fragile harmony. This is why deep thinkers often retreat, not because they dislike people, but because people push them away. They crave depth. Society craves simplicity. They hunger for truth. Society hungers for comfort. But before you let this turn into despair, let's pause. Because there's something else Schopenhauer taught. Solitude is not a punishment, it's a privilege. Great thinkers throughout history, Pascal, Kierkegaard, Bonhoeffer, even the ancient Stoics, found strength in solitude. They realized that while the crowd resists depth, solitude is where clarity is born. The world will tell you that loneliness is failure, but solitude, chosen deliberately, is where the mind sharpens and the soul grows. Still, isolation is not the whole story. If society often resists deep thinkers, how did any of their ideas survive? Why are we even able to quote them today? The answer is that truth, though rejected in the moment, has a way of surviving. Socrates' death did not end philosophy. Galileo's silence did not stop science. Nietzsche's madness did not erase his vision. Ideas that are too heavy for the present often become the foundation of the future. So if you feel misunderstood today, perhaps it is not because you are wrong, but because you are ahead of your time. But let's not romanticize it. Being ahead of your time does not feel noble. It feels exhausting. It feels like speaking a language no one else understands. And here's another uncomfortable truth. Society doesn't necessarily reward the wisest voices. It rewards the loudest, the simplest, the most emotionally appealing. Scroll through social media and you'll see it clearly. A thoughtful, nuanced idea disappears into silence. Meanwhile, a shallow slogan or a viral soundbite gets millions of views. Why? Because depth takes time, and most people are not searching for truth, they are searching for dopamine. That's why history remembers thinkers like Tesla or Van Gogh only after their deaths. It's easier to admire their genius in hindsight once it no longer threatens us. So what do you do if you are one of these people? Someone who cannot help but see too clearly? Are you doomed to loneliness? Not necessarily, but you must learn to navigate the world differently. First, protect your depth. Not every thought belongs in every conversation. Share your truest insights with those who are ready for them. Second, seek out kindred spirits. They exist, scattered, rare, but real. Books, philosophy, art, communities of thought, they are bridges across the isolation. Third, learn the art of translation. As Einstein said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. Sometimes the world isn't rejecting your truth, it's rejecting the way you deliver it. In the end, this is the paradox. The more you think deeply, the more you risk being alone. And yet, it is precisely deep thinkers who move humanity forward. Plato once warned that if a man tries to free others from the cave of illusions, they will resist him, even violently. But without that man, the cave remains forever in darkness. So, yes, thinking deeply may isolate you, but it also makes you necessary. If you've ever felt like an outsider in your thoughts, remember this: you are not broken. You are simply awake in a world that prefers to stay asleep. And while society may fear deep thinkers, it is deep thinkers who carry the torch of progress, burning alone at first, but eventually lighting the way for everyone else. The question is, will you hide your flame to fit in? Or will you dare to let it burn, knowing it may cost you everything, yet in the end may illuminate the world?